Ahead of the 2026 midterms, you have states right now basically racing to change their congressional maps before the actual election, to basically redraw the lines in order to benefit the party in power. You have both Democrat as well as Republican states playing the same game right now. A game, I should mention, which might actually determine who controls Congress. It's a game in which, at the moment at least, Republicans are winning, both numerically by having gained 9 extra districts, but also legally, with the U.S. Supreme Court just ruling that Republicans can go ahead and ignore both race and ethnicity when redrawing the map in order to bolster the GOP. Let me give you a bit of backstory on that particular case that appeared before the U.S. Supreme Court, as well as how that case might help determine the winner of the next election cycle. And of course, if you appreciate content like this, please do smash those like and subscribe buttons so that this video can reach ever more people via the YouTube algorithm. And also, by smashing that subscribe button, you'll get informed of any new videos as soon as we publish them. Thank you very much. Now, getting back to the case at hand, every 10 years, the boundaries of a state's voting districts are redrawn based on the results of the most recent census. In total, the U.S. is divided into 435 different congressional districts, with the U.S. citizens living in each one of those districts responsible for electing one member to the U.S. House of Representatives. Each district is supposed to have roughly the same number of people living in it to make sure that everyone's vote counts equally. That's why, for instance, you have the state of Wyoming, which is huge. It's about the same landmass size as the UK, but they only have 1 congressional district because even though they're big, not too many people live there. Anyway, every 10 years, once the new census numbers come out, every state that has more than 1 congressional district, so for instance, Wyoming doesn't have to do this, but other states, they must go back and redraw the lines of the districts on the map in order to reflect the changes in the population, to make sure, again, each district is still representative of the same number of people on average as every other district in the country. And so that all neatly brings us along to the case out of Texas. Because so many people moved into that state, both a bit during the COVID lockdown period, but also a huge influx of illegal migrants, who, by the way, are counted in the census, because of these two factors, the state's share of the national population grew significantly. And so after the 2020 census was concluded, it was found that Texas would be given 2 additional congressional seats on top of what they already had, which was huge. 2 more lawmakers representing the state of Texas in Congress. Now, the next task was to go to the congressional map and redraw all of the districts to add 2 more. However, the obvious question here is who gets to redraw the districts? The answer is actually simple. It's whichever party happens to be in power in the state legislature, which in Texas is the GOP. And so Texas state Republicans, they drew up a new map which significantly favored them. In August of this year, the Texas GOP unveiled this new map. You can see it up on your screen. And it's a little hard to tell from just looking at it, but that new map, it would actually give Republicans a huge advantage come the midterms. Quote, Texas Republicans unveiled a new congressional map on Wednesday that would provide their party with 5 new red-leaning districts. The redraw would significantly benefit Republicans by making districts held by Democratic Representatives Henry Cuellar and Vicente Gonzalez, who both represent heavily Latino areas of the Rio Grande Valley, redder, and make some Democratic-controlled districts even bluer in an attempt to create GOP-leaning districts elsewhere. And so, in short, the new map would basically consolidate the Democrats into tighter pockets, while at the same time, it would create 5 new districts whose populations voted for Trump by double digits in the previous election. And that's obviously significant. At a time right now when Republicans are holding on to the House by a margin of just 7 votes, and actually, now that I think about it, it's less than 7 because Marjorie Taylor Greene is resigning, and so it'll be more like 6 votes going into the midterms. Well, getting 5 new surefire seats doesn't hurt. In fact, maybe those 5 new Texas seats literally might prove to be the difference between losing the House or retaining control of the House for the Republicans. However, the Texas GOP ran into a bunch of hurdles. First of all, the Democrats in the state legislature, they fled the state in order to break the quorum and to basically not have a vote on it. We did a whole episode on that debacle, but in the end, that tactic didn't work. Eventually, all the Democrats returned to the Texas legislature, and the state voted to pass the new map with those 5 additional Republican-leaning seats. But almost immediately, as you would expect, lawsuits began to be filed. The main case was brought forth by a group that was called the League of United Latin American Citizens. Their main argument in bringing forth this case was that the new congressional map basically diluted the strength of minority voters by splitting up minority communities across several different districts. They claimed that this was a form of racial discrimination with the specific intent to disadvantage voters based on race, which would be illegal. It would violate the 14th Amendment's Equal Protections Clause. On the flip side, however, you had lawyers representing the state of Texas. They denied those allegations, and their argument was that the new maps were based on party advantage rather than on racial advantage. As funny as it sounds, one of them is allowed while the other is not. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled previously in previous cases that creating maps to the advantage of one party over another is generally legal. And so that's why you also have those crazy gerrymandered districts all across the country that look wild. All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment, I'd like to introduce our sponsor and my own personal gold dealer, American Hartford Gold. Now, as soon as the latest round of tariffs hit, almost immediately, the stock market hit some serious waves, we could say. It became super turbulent, very volatile, and of course, these conditions don't just affect Wall Street. They affect all of us with our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I want to introduce a company that I trust and I use myself to help secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move their assets into something tangible, something you can actually hold, physical gold and physical silver. Two precious metals that help me sleep better at night, knowing that I have a hedge against all those brilliant decisions being made over in Washington. Now, they have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your doorstep, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive buy one, get one deal for my viewers. When you call them and mention my name, Roman, for every 1 ounce of gold that you purchase, you can get 1 ounce of free silver. And so take advantage of this special offer. Either call 866-242-2352 or simply text Roman to 65532. That's again, 866-242-2352 or text Roman to 65532. I'll also throw their information. It'll be down in the description box below. Now, eventually, the Texas case made its way in front of the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas. And after a 9-day-long hearing, which included the introduction of thousands of exhibits from both sides, the district court ruled on November 18th against Texas. The 3-judge panel voted 2-1 that Texas may not use the new map because, quote, substantial evidence shows that Texas racially gerrymandered the 2025 map. Now, the state of Texas, you could say, got a bit lucky because under the Federal Voting Rights Act, Texas was allowed to save time by filing an appeal directly with the U.S. Supreme Court. Essentially because of the nature of the case, they were able to bypass the Court of Appeals. And so the U.S. Supreme Court, they took up the case, and on Thursday, December the 4th, they reversed the lower court ruling. In a split 6-3 decision, you had Justices John Roberts, Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, as well as Amy Coney Barrett all rule in favor of Texas. In their order, the U.S. Supreme Court majority, they wrote the following, quote, based on our preliminary evaluation of this case, Texas satisfies the traditional criteria for interim relief. Texas is likely to succeed in its claim that the district court committed at least 2 serious errors. First, by construing ambiguous, direct, and circumstantial evidence against the legislature, the district court failed to honor the legal presumption that the Texas legislature acted in good faith. Second, the district court failed to draw a dispositive or near dispositive adverse inference against the respondents, even though they did not produce a viable alternative map that met the state's avowedly partisan goals. Now, that's obviously a bit of legalese, but in plain English, to the best of my understanding, the U.S. Supreme Court is saying that the lower court erred by, for one, using circumstantial evidence against the state legislature, which assumed that the state legislature was acting in bad faith. And secondly, because gerrymandering for political purposes is legal, the plaintiffs didn't explain how the GOP could do so without violating or diluting the power of minorities. Basically, they did not provide an alternate map which would achieve the goal of political gerrymandering without diluting the votes of minorities. So basically, they made it an impossible situation for the GOP, and as such, quote, the High Court said Texas also made a strong showing that it would suffer irreparable harm if the district court's ruling were not stayed. And so the lower court's ruling was overturned. Now, the case is still playing itself out in the lower court system, but with this U.S. Supreme Court decision now in place, Texas has effectively won. And so there you have it. Republican state legislatures, not just in Texas, but across the whole country, can go ahead and they can ignore both race and ethnicity in order to bolster the GOP's strength in congressional maps, which is a big deal. Up on your screen right now, it's the current state of redistricting across the whole country. And here are the changes thus far. For the Democrats, you have California adding another 5 Democrat-leaning seats and Utah adding 1 Democrat-leaning seat. It's kind of a long story as to why Utah's Republican state legislature added a Democrat seat, but the short of it is that they were basically forced to by a judge. Then on the flip side, on the Republican side, you have Texas adding 5 Republican-leaning seats. You have Missouri adding 1 seat. You have Ohio adding 2, North Carolina adding 1, and then Indiana is on the verge of adding 2 new Republican districts. Their plan has already passed the state House and is now being voted on in the state Senate. Also, on top of those states, you also have the Republican-leaning states of Florida, Nebraska, and Kansas in the process of discussing redrawing their maps, as well as the left-leaning states of Illinois, Virginia, and Maryland discussing it as well. And so those states, they're in the early process of drawing up their maps, and it's not clear whether they're actually going to do it or not before the midterms. However, with just the states that have already done it, the GOP appears to have an advantage of 3 seats over the Democrats. Democrats were able to flip 6 seats, while the Republicans flipped 9 thus far. And who knows, when you're talking about razor-thin margins, maybe this whole redistricting battle will literally determine who controls the House starting the next session. If you'd like to see a visual of all the newly drawn districts, or if you'd like to read the full text of the majority opinion in this Texas case, all those links will be down there in the description box below this video for you to peruse at your own leisure, which is, again, that same description box right below those like and subscribe buttons, both of which I hope you already smashed, but if you haven't, here's another opportunity. Lastly, if you are looking for a good gift, Christmas gift, New Year's gift, maybe for yourself, maybe for a loved one, consider the Epic Times. We're running a phenomenal holiday sale on subscriptions. It's a trial subscription. It barely costs anything. And here's the best thing in my opinion. If you are looking for a gift for someone in your life who is looking for a good news source, maybe they are tired of the national news sources, they don't like them, maybe their local newspaper folded. There's many reasons people are looking for a good news source. Get them a trial subscription to the Epic Times. I think, I forgot exactly the deal, but it's either like 6 months to a year, so it's a long trial subscription, and it only costs a few dollars to you because it's a holiday special, but it's effectively several $100s worth of a subscription because they'll be getting access to all the documentaries, the videos, the analysis pieces on there, the infographics, all the articles we have going back 20 years and into the future, and so it's like a full premium subscription, but you're just getting it at a holiday discount. So you can get even several, give them to multiple people, and they'll be like, wow, you got me a full subscription to the Epic Times for like a year? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But they don't know that you paid a discount rate. Or, you can tell them too, it's not a secret. But basically, it's what do they call it? It's an asymmetrical opportunity where you can spend a little but get a lot. So check it out. I'll throw the link to that holiday special. It'll be down there in the description box below at the very top. Click on it. Get a subscription for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your colleagues, for everyone in your life. They should all have access to honest journalism. That's just my opinion. Again, it'll be right there at the top of the description box below. Check it out. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Stay informed. Most importantly, stay free.